Today I would like to make a video inspired by the Great Gatsby. Is there any reason why I thought of this book today? No, I just happened to remember one of the essays that I wrote about the Great Gatsby because I felt very just immediately what are the words that come up when you think of Great Gatsby, like just all in one. The saying, money can't buy happiness, right? It's just all in one, the morals of the book, the lesson that the book gives, and just what parents say to their children all the time. And this is why children are required to read this book. It's not to learn about the downfalls of love. They're not going to talk about love with this specific outcome that's always going to be motivated by, when the woman is always pursued by money and she is already materialistic, just like a money-driven girl, she's just gonna hook on to this richer man, and this man is also extremely materialistic, but you can't see it at first because it seems that the woman is kind of interested in him and taking advantage of him. This is the vibe that it's giving. And that's what happens in the many decades before in America. You think about it here now, it's not that people are more thoughtful, that this kind of materialistic and forming relationships with other people, friends, just making wealthy connections, it's still a huge motive today, really. The phrase money can't buy happiness I wrote I kind of want to comment on my essays because sometimes when I read it again, it is hard. There is a very specific thought I wanted to express through it, but it didn't come across right because of just the imprecision of the words, and each word kind of because it's vague, it just kind of it's just accumulating vagueness and just doesn't have a specific direction that all the words can, the meaning can flow through all the words in the sentence, right? The phrase, money can't buy happiness, is a foolish remark if uttered to the not-so-wealthy by the upper echelon, and rather is a statement created for children to work hard and set to acquire achievements and the qualities that stay with them for a lifetime. Yeah, so I think these parents and people who are wise, supposed to be wise to us, they kind of have a very linear meaning to money and happiness. Just like money, you work hard to get money. You work hard to get the status and the money. And then they teach it completely separately that money can't buy happiness, right? That money doesn't guarantee happiness, and you need to be something more to be happy, more than money. They do teach this, but what they don't realize to teach us another specific lesson to children is that, because I think they're really failing when they when they think it's not money that brings happiness, it's still related, some kind of other success, whether it's with just career, right? And that's kind of non-visceral, but with their families, they just have really hard requirements, very hard expectations for them for success. And it's either just for example, with these Asian families, it's I don't know, playing the cello really well, playing the piano. All the Chinese parents, they are pushing their children to play the piano all the time. And just every day you need to play piano. This is just every time you play piano, the kind of desperation they put into it is literally that if you don't play today, you're gonna forget what you learned, and you're not. And every single time, it just adds up. Every single day in your life when you're young that you decided not to practice the piano, that's just going to make you worse at the instrument. That's just going to make you appear as a less successful image when you're adult. When you're adult, it's just like you are sealed. This is what you look like to others, and this is your success rate to others. And it's just an image that is sealed. And by this time it's too late. You can't stop improving. And just like the drive and determination towards improving needs to be set when they are young. And for each age, there's just like a standard for comparison for what the prodigies are like, what the advanced people are like. And if you're just like below average, if just like there's no sympathy for these people who try so hard. They actually tried so hard. And it seems like from the matter of an instant that it's just like maybe the teacher is yelling at this child for not learning fast enough because they're not using their brain enough when they practice. But they might practice really hard their entire childhood and not get to where they am. And because it's never said so harshly to them, against them, they don't want to express themselves, that they feel very insecure over other people, that maybe they are more intelligent at this skill and they turned out to be more successful at it. They turned out to be professionals and well-known later in life. I think that's very harsh, honestly. That's what I mean by, like, children work hard and set to acquire achievements and qualities that stay with them for a lifetime. The Buchanans seem to enjoy all the privileges of wealth, and the drama extra is simply due to the unfaithfulness of the person. I've heard like this stereotype, and I can't imagine why people fail to see the moral implications of all people involved, of who they're gossiping about. Just like rich people, like when they cheat, it's just the whole different level of newsworthy, honestly, and everyone knows about it. And just like kind of like betrayal. But when it's posed as a news story like this, and that it belongs to the world of like upper echelon and wealthy people, it seems that the betrayal is not really faulty to that man or this woman at all. Like there's just, because it falls into the two tropes of like for the man, right? There's one trope for the man and there's another trope for the woman. For the man, the trope is just like, oh, they're so rich and they just got bored with their wife who they got paired with a long time ago. It might be like a younger wife, like a trophy wife, and they didn't really like that person specifically when they were married. But unfortunately, he just kind of like stuck with this woman, and he got bored. And even though he could have just like did the divorce nicely, he got pulled into another relationship, unfortunately. I don't know if it's going to be appropriate for me to talk about this on YouTube, but it just seems kind of like falling into the archetype of gender, unfortunately. Yeah, and for the women, it's just like very unconsciously that these other women who are not as rich, they tend to like feel jealous of this woman's wealth and just attribute it to the marriage and say that she's a gold digger and she is, latching on to connections with rich friends and find a rich husband. And this is how she became wealthy. Yeah, there's no healthy. I see like people online called like the Wizard Liz and other inspirational women, like these people. This Middle Eastern woman called the Wizard Liz, she used to be abused at home and just like hardcore religion, and suddenly she set herself free, it seems like. But no, it's just like she got exposed to the opportunities of America and was able to let through in this free environment, and just like always employing this positive archetype that these women are so just like so empowered once they learn to like make a living on their own, usually through some kind of creative efforts. Like for her, it's just making these inspirational videos online and empowering others, right? And just like she even advocates for women just to find like a really financially stable husband, and just like somebody that can also like care for her specifically, and that is her job, rather than just saying like. And then she just posted this video like, oh, this woman, she got cheated on, and she like had some like tears. I don't know how sad she is, but anyways, they look very happy there before, just not because of each other, they just doing all these activities together, and just like a power couple. They're making money together. Seems like there's no real betrayal that could be just like broken through because just like they were actually had some special exclusive, because exclusive couples, like they're just like the closest people on earth. They would have some like exclusive feelings to each other, and like passion once they do things together, a feeling that's created when no other two people are with them, and they don't get this feeling with others. But no, it seems like they were kind of union, and they were just, because they're validated to be a couple, because they are yeah. And I'm not saying like I don't know anything about their relationship. I'd be pretty offended if I heard what I said, but you know, I don't know. I just feel like this is really just like they need us like make it known like what is special, something about their compatibility, like what is special about these two people being together, right? Just something specific, something like kind of like an adventure maybe that they could do together that nobody else has done. And just broken through hardships with their own ways of like collaborating with each other, and just there's like something special about the way they can like work together to overcome a huge hardship that would make their relationship much closer and meaningful, rather than just like earning money together. I don't really feel that there's anything special about it, and there's really monotonous, honestly. So this is why I just don't think that romantic relationships, they bring something special to the table other than just being sexual and exclusive. This is what I feel. Because all the I'm not saying any of the relationships are formed because they're working together. No, that would be ridiculous. It's just that they belong to the same society, and they're just kind of only willing to hang out with each other because they're that level of rich. And to hang out with that someone poor is just a whole new relationship automatically. What I mean by that, it just brings a whole different feeling that is because they are superior in wealth. It is not because anything of this specific traits of either of those in the relationship. It doesn't come from the personhood at all. It's just because it's a special kind of situation, because there are so many different types of rich. Once you get like in the context of the novel, like more and higher upper echelon, there are just like more and more levels of rich, and some people have levels of wealth that you can't even imagine, right? When they have that level of wealth, they're just living a whole different life, which makes them a wealth, and they just, everything that they see and that the world that they live in is completely different. It looks different, and they get different opportunities, and they have different set of problems that also has results directly from their wealth. So they are only seen for their wealth. Sorry. What I said is apathy and care can't be measured in a person or compared between even those that have gone through the same situation. Yes, and what I want to say before I analyze that is that just like the level of wealth that someone has in the society, that all the antagonists in this book, because I honestly think that everyone, Daisy, Tom Buchanan, and even the victim who was Great Gatsby, they're all antagonists in my opinion. They just all get away, they're all excused by their wealth. Each one of their actions is just blurred over by their wealth, honestly. It's not a logistical matter, it's just that this is totally not what I mean, like that they were just kind of like distracted by their wealth and partying, that somehow like, because this example is so specific and action oriented, you can see this is definitely not a moral like response to like excuse what they have done. It's not because they were rich and partying together that they forgot to like watch the car and they're just too excited and they just bumped over someone, and that is why the Tom had the lack of emotional response when you know, just, it's not because they got ran over the car, they were just, yeah, it just happened to be this way because they're constantly distracted by wealth. That's the only way that this excuse could be used again and again. No, it's not. And just like I want to talk about the response, it's like the horror. This reminds me of the last video I made about the outsiders. It's just like, except that they did because it was an accident, and just like Tom did, just like she, I mean like the Myrtle or whatever her name was, like the mistress was like met her tragic end, and Tom didn't even care. But what if she knew that beforehand, and she knew how apathetic a person and just horrible person from something else, that Tom was just did something horrible, or even if it didn't have to do with himself, like something else in his little rich world happened and he had no response, then Tom Buchanan's mistress, or yeah, who was actually George Wilson's wife, was cheating on him, then she would not even engage with Tom Buchanan if she took these responses more seriously. But it's because they're wealthy and it seems that they're unraveled in their own world. This is the actual excuse that people have for not like judging their actual like emotional reactions seriously. And just like, it is very counterintuitive to reduce someone's like empathy and feeling for others to a single moment, for example. And it's not that you always have to see someone when something horrible happens and see like how they express their sorrow. There's no such thing. You cannot look into someone's brain and know what they're actually thinking. And some people are just actors and actresses. They can just seem very empathetic all the time, constantly, including in times of really huge accidents that cause grief and loss. So it's quite a complicated matter, but it's just horrible that beforehand that just this mistresses, they have really bad connotation. They make people really feel really uncomfortable because they're cheating by will, and the man is also cheating by will. And it's just kind of a layered effect. Like, who are we going to blame first when we find out about the cheating? And it somehow also has to do with wealth, because just we're not blaming wealthy people for no reason, but it's just like the story that's instantly sparked that, yeah, the man is willing to cheat with like another woman because he is arrogant and he wants a younger woman or something like that. No, when no, they're both at fault, and they need to like investigate the personal reasons surrounding each individual person in that relationship. And feel very bad for this woman. Yeah, let me find out her name first. Yeah, her name is actually Myrtle. I thought that was gonna be impossible. I thought it was maybe because I was watching Harry Potter that I thought her name was Myrtle, but no, actually. Yeah. Okay, so there's no way to measure how sorry a person is. So this is when you have to take their general behavior into account, really. And just first of all, what happens first is just like how they treat the people around them, what they cheat on them. That just, I think cheating just it is an action, and it just active impulse, and it is just automatically makes someone way worse than someone who just got into an accident. And then you have to consider separately like this lack of reaction they have when this horror is coming on, and while working on their own little projects and like just like wealthy celebrations while it's going on. It does probably indicate a lack of apathy, even though they didn't know the person. And we are the readers who have the dramatic irony of knowing that just Tom is actively involved in this relationship with the victims in the accident, right? So he is just guilty, and guiltiness is what keeps him silent in here, not because the fact that guiltiness can keeping him silent from saying anything, just it seems like the same, even worse, it just makes it even worse than if he just was apathetic and didn't have any reaction towards a person's death, just like ending their life, honestly. What I found about in the book, the lack of reaction and detail that followed the tragic accident, is that something makes me feel like loss affects those like maybe middle class and just more normal, and that their life is tending to stop to actually immerse themselves into grief and just stop what they're doing, their daily lives, because the horror of what happened, a person ending their life, it cannot be compared to anything else. Yeah. In this wealthy life, I just want to see it from this perspective. Not that they don't want to stop their lives and just like funeral for this person, funeral for that person. We're so sorry. It just kind of feels like the point is that, like, for example, that nobody came to Jay Gatsby's funeral, God, it means that their wealthy lives, they can't stop because they're always doing like regular parties, regular social events, and these social events are just what's regular about it is not what's happening. It's just ridiculous, just like nonsense and superficial conversations between them. It's just like what makes each one of these special meeting events different is like what they're doing, and that means like what they're eating, what they're drinking, and what they're talking about work or each other. And it's just the same thing. We need to catch up every time. This is probably what they say, and what they catch up about, it doesn't have anything to do with the drama, because the drama is done by themselves, and it's just cheating and just kept secretly and covered up later so that their wealthy lives can continue at the same rate. And what is intrinsic about their circumstance of life that can't be stopped, their wealthy living that can't be stopped? I think it's rather that if you think about a direct contradiction, if they're going to a funeral and they always have to look wealthy. When you stop life and when you go to a funeral, you can't look wealthy, right? But if you look wealthy through not doing anything, then it's just you putting on fancy clothes and not being anything, and other people can easily just see. This is just like a kind of short circuit, actually. See you just how you look doesn't have any correspondence to what you do. Your image doesn't have any correspondence to what you do, because what you do is just partying, and they're just like illegal activities. That's not done by everyone. That's not saying that illegal activities are anything heroic or anything, but that's only what Great Gatsby does, and that's why he's the center of the novel, right? He's just like a more fuller character because of it. He tried to reinvent, because this is a product of him used to be poor and wanting to do something with his life, and what got him up there, all the efforts that were able to elevate him to this pinnacle of wealth, means that he has something that he does behind it, and other people are just born rich. They're just part of a rich family, right? And if you just stop life and what you're doing, the celebrations, which kind of infer that they're doing some like work that has the honor and level of guaranteeing the wealth they have, when this stops to like find grief, that's why their life can't stop in any circumstance. Whether it's like they need is just like immerse themselves in the loss and like funeral mode, kind of. People have to realize that there is no constant work that each of the individuals are involved in that maintains their wealth, or else it wouldn't need to be maintained. They're just given it. They're just born into it, and that's unfairness of it, really. And I wanna also say like my initial shock to this book. When I first read the few sentences, I couldn't even understand what it meant, honestly. I couldn't even understand what it meant. So just like the narrator, Nick Carraway, and the fact that there was someone just casually narrating it, it's not just that, oh, we're just gonna put my own quotes in there, what I said to those other people when I was part of this VIP circle. No, it's rather that he is always like bluffing. He's obviously just like wants actively to tell the whole entire tale to to the readers. And that is the premise of the book. You can see that he has a very, very special way of talking. Nick Carraway. Okay, yeah, he is a Yale graduate and a World War I veteran who moves to West Egg. Yeah, let me search The Great Gatsby. Okay, The Great. I also want to, just to remind myself later, I want to go through the SparkNotes analysis and see what I think about it, because I think that there are many parts. I read this book 2 years ago. And there are many parts of the book that I forgot, but this is just my overview of it so far. Yeah, okay, so let me see the PDF right now and see what the way he was saying. Okay, and what it says about the book, because the opening of the book is very important. Sorry. Oh, Jesus, there's a book here. Well, have I read the book? I did read this book. I mean, I'm almost in 12th grade. This means that when I read this book, it was 3 years ago, exactly. Yeah. I'm about to go to 12th grade. I can't believe it, honestly. Who is Tom Buchanan? Daisy's husband, obviously. Well, who would put this in the book? Oh my god. Yeah, the green light has symbolism, and let me try. I'm going to ask ChatGPT what it means, and I will search on SparkNotes too. Yeah, I need to go. You gotta be kidding me if it doesn't have this book. The Great Gatsby was a horrible book, in my opinion. I really do hate this book. It just didn't. Although this book is not meant to make you feel good about the relationship, there's just nothing special about there's no magic between certain characters. There's no special relationship between two characters. And it's just a matter of a downfall of an innocent man. I didn't like this book. And when I read this language, I couldn't really understand it. Great Gatsby. I need to look at SparkNotes later. Where's full book. Let me read it. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. He didn't say any more, but we've always been unusually communicative in a reserved way. And I understood that he meant a great deal more than that. So before I find out what he's gonna say about great deal more than that, I'm just gonna say, like, I don't like when these parents have advice that just like this quote is totally nonsense. And I'm going to later think about the book I read a few years ago that was many years ago. I think this was at least 5 years ago that I read this book called Candide. At least 5 years ago. Yeah, we're not allowing anybody to get away or feel better about themselves. Or in the reverse, just like feel more punished and accountable for something when it's just like relative between people, and we're not basing punishments on someone else. There's no mathematical equation for like making the punishment someone has harsher because they're somewhat worse than what another person who was like legally punished, for example, did. There's no way to measure how this new person that is in question, how much worse his actions are. There's just like no number that can compare. And I think there's just like something really morally wrong with it. And there's just always people constantly making mistakes, like just like excusing their person's horrible actions because of the specific life that they gave them. And even being spoiled, even being born into wealth and all the privileges, that is also an excuse for the horrible actions that they have, because maybe their parents indulged them. And they're not going to name specific people either, but they still get the impression that it started from the fact that they're spoiled, and that makes it not their fault, which is totally wrong. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, I feel like Nick is a really like warm person that tries to get along with everyone else, and he wouldn't even criticize anyone except for in his book, and he just suddenly takes out this sharp edge to like criticize people in his book. He keeps it to himself, but when he's interacting with other people, he just always gets along. He never criticizes them. And how he could be manipulated by this is that just like I think people can like every time they make the verbal impulse to like say something bad about someone, it just becomes concrete. And when Nick decides to not do that in real life, when they're actually in person contact with each other, he kind of really does forget to criticize them, unfortunately. And this is because there is lack of verbal action against each other, and it's just not accepted in this world. Then nobody actually feels anything sharp against each other. Nobody has a sharp blade against each other as themselves against someone else, just like, and they're seeing too much from the group effect. And there's no like, we're not gonna name a specific adjective for like this person A, B, and C, these people, or B, C, D, that's another group. There's no, we would rather evaluate what's going on between you and someone else, or between someone else and another person, just only two people. That's the only way you can find something precise in their interpersonal relationship, I feel like. So I feel like Nick, he uses a very philosophical language. And I want to try to understand now, like, because I didn't understand this part when I was first reading this book. Okay, I'm just going to go over the beginning. In consequence, I'm inclined to reserve all judgments, a habit that has opened up many curious natures to me, and also made me the victim of not a few veteran bores. The abnormal mind is quick to detect and attach itself to this quality when it appears in a normal person, and so it came about that in college I was unjustly accused of being a politician because I was privy to the secret griefs of wild, unknown men. Yeah. I'm going to process this for a little bit. This is just exactly what I was talking about before. Just the way that Nick was just like sharing himself and presenting himself in a way that made him compatible with the exact people that he wanted, and just like manipulating the people he likes, even to just like feel like that he actually wants to be close with them and doesn't like the people that the enemies that they have, for example, that just makes him unjustly accused of being a politician, right? And he knew secretly the briefs of wild unknown men, and he says griefs because he knows horrible things about other people, but he does justify himself that he's still hanging out with them because it is because of something horrible that was done to him. And whatever they responded with, even if it was a horrible action, it was a response to just what befell that person, unfortunately. He feels like he's a very secretive person, and he gets more hunches and insights about other people than others. Why? Because he keeps everything to himself, and he's very good at presenting himself. But being deceitful and untruthful to any extent, not that it's bad or not good, it shouldn't change your mind that it makes you more insightful than other people, because you don't know how many other people are also doing what you do. And the fact that you're doing it an extreme extent doesn't mean that other people don't unconsciously or consciously do it too. So you shouldn't make your self-esteem greater in that respect. This is not a valid assumption that he can get, in my opinion. He really takes it seriously, the hunches that he has about other people, that they are plagiaristic and marred by obvious expressions. So I didn't understand what that means, actually. The intimate revelations of young men, or at least the terms in which they express them, are usually plagiaristic and marred by obvious suppressions. he says that the opinions that other people get, then like his associates, like those people, he was talking about the generation of those young people that also graduated from these prestigious colleges at the same time as him, relatively speaking. It means that it's not only they're plagiaristic. He's saying plagiaristic because he thinks that whenever someone feels something strong and specific about someone else, they feel greater about their ability to understand other humans. Honestly, this happens a lot because it's actually strong and specific. They just think that they are better at reading other people and they are better at this invaluable skill, but not really, because there's no one to evaluate for them what they feel is even accurate about that person. It may be totally wrong just because it's strong, and you tend to feel have a lot of opinions and criticisms about other people that you can keep to yourself and that are general and that are well spoken doesn't necessarily mean that you are very good at reading people. And I feel it's very interesting that people don't tend to evaluate how people are really just like who is better at reading each other. And what this coalesces into is just like between women, there's like a social dynamic of feeling that some women are really more socially adept, and others are very socially inept based on something so like emotional, because women they often have this natural personality of being like cheering and helpful to each other. Yeah, and they're just very offensive. Like they're saying to each other like who has EQ and like who doesn't. They even discuss this with the word EQ when they're comparing each other, but they're not actually comparing themselves to each other, because that's just like horrible. And if you have worse EQ than someone else and you guys are speaking to it with this kind of like stigma, or I need to find a better word than stigma. There's kind of like dishonoring people for EQ when it really erases the kind of honor someone gets for actually making a conscious effort to help someone else and feel empathy for them. No, they feel like it's just natural that some women have more emotional skills than others, and it's highly seen in this book that Daisy, she's just really, although she's very like glittering, glamorous, right? But she is just very popular, and it seems like all the women like her because she is great at talking, and there's something very, just like she's completely idolized, right? And
比那个哦，希望这一碗还这么点点，20块钱，很小吧？感觉小很多。我吃。
And this, like, emotional intelligence or reading other people this way through emotion, and like it just implies more humanity. That's a compassionate connotation of it. It just goes to show that this none of this actually can be quantified, even though it's called emotional intelligence, EQ. And the fact that they evaluate that some men and some other people don't have it, if they took this seriously and heard what they said, they would be really mad, honestly. And just imagine there's a situation in which like all the other women are just like kind of like being pulled into the climate of this discussion about EQ, and they all kind of have this underlying assumption that other people they all have some kind of EQ to some level, and some other people have like too high EQ or something. It could all happen, honestly. And there's another group of another woman who are all happen to just be discussing the group that maybe just mentioned, and they said that this woman has EQ and this one, and then just completely changes the relationship between these women, between this nonsense. And this how they arrived at this conclusion is just totally just like there's no method of accuracy, and it's just like judging specific interactions. And something amazing that someone said, this shouldn't be latched onto. Just move on and make yourself better, right? And they wouldn't be susceptible to thinking that they're going to make themselves better human beings with greater compassion if they keep on holding on to this. And the idea of improvement is just not occurring to them. Why? Because if they just already feel that some people have it and some people just have none at all, even then they just don't need to improve on it at all. And then when they see somebody others like stark judgments of them and they're just not aligning with anything that they thought of themselves as a group, this just means that it's arbitrary and not willing to like accept it. And even though the only explanation that they can think of for this like contradictions between who has EQ and who doesn't, determined by different groups of women, they're just gonna say that they don't like them. That's why that's what it ends up being, actually. And once they see how confusing and arbitrary it is, they still don't want to stop, because there's something moral about this quality of judging people by this ability, which could even directly be opposite of how actually caring and kind and empathetic someone actually is. Yeah. the fact that I just want to point out the fact that he says revelation was quivering on the horizon for the intimate revelations of young men, or at least the terms in which they suppress themselves. Now it seems like he is literally just assuming too much in himself that he can read people, and suddenly through another subtle action that the other person exhibits, they can finally come to a conclusion about this person's mental patterns or something like that, or their psychology. Absolutely not, actually. This means that he is too engrossed in this and fails to see the obvious signs, the obvious red flags that other people are exhibiting, like that are maybe even obviously just kind of psychopathic. This is why he misses it. There's kind of like an emotional journey about how he like gets to know someone and just feels about them and comes to a kind of culmination, right? He says, reserving judgments is a matter of infinite hope. That means that he is hoping and just has this like latent excitement building in himself, bottling up when he feels that he can find out something about someone else. And that makes him a great human being, honestly, to be able to find out, just be interested in other people's characters and judge their actions with humanity, and come to harder judgments when other people just fail to see something, just like an error or something even evil in someone else, right? That makes him a great human being. He thinks there's something very special about him, actually. He says that abnormal mind is quick to detect and attach itself to this quality when it appears in a normal person. That means that he has a greater level of expression of these qualities. What does it mean? Like, other people could feel something vague, a specific emotion about a person, that something special, whether it's good, just desirably, or not even, maybe even like very evil. You don't even know. He thinks that because he realizes it more quickly and attaches it to this specific emotion so strongly that he can like express himself about this person better. When it is actually, you need to think about the case where there are multiple stigma, like auras, like that you feel inside yourself. That makes it more difficult to express, and they just not harder to express it. But what they feel about that person is more complex, and that makes it more accurate and apt, that person actually. So they are, even though they didn't express it, they're more like understanding all the factors and complexities of that person than Nick, actually. So what he sees on the outside, Nick, is that those people didn't express themselves at all. They may just feel uncomfortable, but really those people could be a lot more complex than him, and he shouldn't think in this way, honestly. Now I want to talk about the most important chapter of this book. It's where James Gatz, who becomes Jay Gatsby, they are.
Huh?
Yeah, so let me read this. James Gatz, that was really, or at least legally, his name. He had changed it at the age of 17, and at the specific moment that witnessed the beginning of his career, when he saw Dan Cody's yacht drop anchor over the most insidious flat on Superior Lake. We have to, why this is narrated in this book as a memory. No, it's not a memory. It's going back, but it's a narration actually, because you need to see the image, the actual circumstance, how superficial he is. It's just because he saw this yacht house of someone he deeply and greatly admired for many years, that he was in an instant suddenly inspired to take this into his own and completely reinvent himself. It says it was James Gatz who had been loafing around along the beach that afternoon in a torn green jersey and a pair of canvas pants, but it was already Jay Gatsby who borrowed a rowboat, pulled out to Tuolumne, and informed Cody that a wind might catch him and break him up in an hour. What does it mean by he was already Jay Gatsby and he wasn't James Gatz? It doesn't say anywhere, when he decided, there's no way that he just suddenly in his life decided to paint a picture of himself that's full and complete, because that always necessitates something concrete that he's gonna do, and he doesn't know what he's gonna do when he embodies. It's really an attitude that's already changed in him, even though he is highly insecure and uncertain about what he can do to get himself to a different, totally different image that doesn't have to do with his really like below ground facade, right? Or like kind of like person right now. So when he borrowed a rowboat and tried to reach out to someone, and he was actually he's not really doing anything yet, but he's really want to ask someone about what he can do for himself. When before it needs to be seen that the difference, he didn't even want to know what he could do to himself, and that's why he didn't find out what he could do. And there was a point he didn't come up with this journey himself. It took the active counsel of many of his just people in his new life, really. And he wants to belong. When he reaches out to that person, Cody, he wants to be part of that person's life, when before he wasn't even introduced to that person. Because they weren't really just connected or available to him. The attitude has already changed, and why his parents were described as shiftless and unsuccessful farm people. It's not that they are shiftless and unsuccessful, it's just that this is Jay's new attitude towards him, and it just completely changed. He probably feels very great respect for his parents before, but now not anymore. Let's go to SparkNotes now to explore more. I think it's a very good tool. Even though English teachers, they really forbid the use of SparkNotes, I think it's a really good tool, as long as you don't copy from it. And to make that change in attitude, it's just really drawn by inspiration of something else to justify that you suddenly feel bad about something else. It's what creates that unconscious turn towards what you've been living in right now. That's what's happening in Jay Gatsby's mind at that time when he decided to reinvent himself. And he would never call it reinvent himself at that time because he's very insecure, but he just already feels, the starting of it is just he feels about what he has been given and he wants better, actually. Or else there would be some kind of guilt about just suddenly feeling bad about your parents, because if you really do, first of all, you really do feel bad about them, then you want to run away. And at the same time, if you run away, then that means that you're guilty about what you feel about your parents. So that's what traps him. He was trapping himself. he needed to have a stronger inspiration of seeing like what he could possibly attain that was so high that would just overcome any just kind of qualms about the guilt he would have towards like, oh, I really don't like my parents and just feel so restrained and this is not fair to me. That makes those negative feelings entirely valid. Yeah, I just now the last part of this video, I want to go just get a taste of what this movie looks like, really. Let me see. Let's see what they say on Reddit. Okay. Yeah, this is Durmans. He's the director of one of the movies of The Great Gatsby. So he just there's some kind of insecurity about the way that Nick just speaks and acts, because both in writing and speech he does employ this like a really puffy philosophical tone, and it did make just the director insecure to the point about him, just uncomfortable about him, to the point where he is just his background as being an alcoholic, and just for that reason of him speaking this manner in a way that's not direct and just showing the quality that this specific type of speech that he created for himself could to other people, this this really inspired him to say that he was morbidly alcoholic. And another part of like it is the insecurity that why would Nick do this in the normal state? If associate with these horrible people who other people already know about, like not only does he did contraband, he's probably definitely a horrible reputation escaping the army or whatever it was. Like, why would he associate with these people and at the same time have this premise of just saying, oh, I'm so good at understanding people and reading people? It just kind of seems like if it's not said, it's just even maybe that he wants to like know these people more, which is just a matter of curiosity if it is, actually. Yeah. Let's watch the film now.
I'm stealing her away, Caraway.
Ladies and gentlemen, a jazz history of the world and accompanying fireworks!
Come on, Nick.
Look around you. Rich girls don't marry poor boys. She's mine.
Your face is familiar. Weren't you in the 3rd Division during the war?
Oh yes, the 9th Battalion.
I was in the 7th.
Excuse me.
I knew you looked familiar. Having a good time, old
Oh,
sport?
the whole thing's incredible. I live just next door. He sent me an actual invitation. Seems I'm the only one. I still haven't met Mr. Gatsby. No one's met him. They say he's 3rd cousin to the Kaiser and 2nd cousin to the devil.
I'm afraid I haven't been a very good host, old sport. You see,
I remember he was
I'm Gatsby.
These parties are just so magical.
His smile was one of those rare smiles that you may come across 4 or 5 times in life. It seemed to understand you and believe in you, just as you would like to be understood and believed in.
Sorry, old sport. I thought you knew.
I think what it means, this quote, is just like he feels exposed to this like exuberance and this just like glamour and just glittery parties, and he feels insecure. He doesn't belong here because of the wealth that is required to host such a party. This is just like the most beautiful party he has ever seen. And what that means, that they can believe in you, that means that other people, they treat you as long as you belong. And it's not that they're being fake and saying, oh, old sport, just pretending to be friends with you. Everyone's super classy and just feel like you're really invited here.
Please just, I don't know what to say. Please forgive me.
It's quite all right.
I've had so much to drink.
Yes.
Mr. Gatsby, sir. Chicago
Oh.
1-1.
I'll be just a minute.
I'm taking my new hydroplane out in the morning. Would you like to go with me?
What time?
The time that suits you.
Well, that's very kind of you.
Lovely to see you again, Miss Baker.
If there's anything that you want, just ask for it, old sport.
Fireworks.
Excuse me. I will join you later.
I expected him to be,
Old and fat.
yes. Young men don't just drift coolly out of nowhere and buy a palace on Long Island.
This was, let me see what time this was. This is when they had the flapper dresses. Okay. Okay, great. Cats. 1920, so this was during when they had the flapper dresses.
And he was an Oxford man. However, I don't believe it.
Why not?
I don't know. I just don't believe he went there.
I think this
He,
Old and fat.
yes. Young men don't just drift coolly out of nowhere and buy a palace on Long Island.
He told me once he was an Oxford man. However, I don't believe it.
Why not?
I don't know. I just don't believe he went there.
The way that she says it, it's just like she's delivering a famous quote, but it's by herself. Yeah. Anyways.